Yeah.
You want to be my slide number person? Or do you want to go eat pizza and I'll be the slide number person?
Yes.
I know. I'm Lou. I don't do anything but sleep.
I just want to make sure it's accessible.
You know, I bet.
I don't care, but
Drink
get out of the shot.
I don't want to be on YouTube either.
It makes it look like I'm speaking to an empty room whenever I'm watching this. It's like, hello, solo cup. Oh, okay. I don't even get the solo cup as an audience.
Oh yeah, there it is. It's all good. It's
You know,
accessible.
this was all.
You'll be famous.
Oh, man.
Wait, oh yeah.
All right.
You're welcome.
Do you know how to use this?
Yes, go to view. Or you can just hit the present button at the top right. Magical button, but also. I was way too lazy to put in transitions in this slide. But hello, everyone. My name is Caleb Tower. I was a student here, and hopefully next semester I will become a student again. But until then, that's a little bit about me. I don't really feel like talking about myself, so if you guys really care that much about myself, you can read. Mostly what I do, I have a pretty wide domain of things that I work on. Currently, I work in blockchain engineering, and I'm a cybersecurity analyst for the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. So I gotta kind of say it right beforehand, the stuff that I'm telling you guys about, it's not the view of UCO, OMRF, EOS Locksmith, or anything else that I work for. But I figure that you guys are pretty, used to being taught to regarding computer science. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about, I want to tell you guys a little bit more about just experiences going into college, into the workforce. Like, what money should you expect to get back? What are the things that you're going to, like, what are you going to expect? What is going to be expected of you? The unexpected, and so on and so forth. So, like I said, the three things that we're really going to try to go through today, because if you know me at all, you know I love to rant, and I'm going to try really, really hard to make it to where you guys can get back to your pizza. So the things that are expected of you, the things that you as a worker or as a computer scientist should expect from your employer, and the things that are going to be unexpected in the workforce. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is things that are expected of you. So this thing kind of mind boggles people a lot. Right now, are computer science skills the most important thing in the workplace? No, they're incredibly important, right? Very, very important for you to have. Otherwise, you will not be like a software engineer. You won't be a cybersecurity analyst. You won't be a computer programmer. Obviously, you have to have them. But the most important thing that you can have in the workforce is people skills, actually, right? So a lot of this is because business people are becoming more in tune with computer science, right? You could have the Dennis Ritchies and the Ken Thompsons of, back whenever Unix was being created, who could sit behind a closet, people feed them through a slot in the door. It's like, what'd you make? I made some computery stuff. Cool, right? That's not a thing anymore. You have to be able to explain yourself to a live person whenever you're going into the workplace. So really, this is an important thing to keep in mind. So whenever you climb up in an organization, if you're ambitious and you really want to get somewhere, your skills are definitely going to help, right? But to get into an organization in the first place, who you know, who you've networked with, what your credentials are, the whole reason why you're getting a degree, right? That's going to be a little bit more important. So keep that in mind. And even whenever you're in the workforce, make sure that you don't typecast everybody as just being a human being. It's not. Has anybody seen that comic? Sorry, I'll try not to derail too much. Has anybody seen that comic? I can't remember what it's called. It's called like Weird Earth or something. It's like with blob, the people who are, like genderless or whatever, they just say weird things. Anyway, I'll show you guys later. It's you can't typecast people as one individual, right? An example of this, whenever I was working at Sonic Corporate Industries, I was a couple of things. One of them was a data analyst. I took in weird data and tried to present it in a pretty way to the business, because business people like charts and graphs and stuff. So that's what I did. And you can go a lot of the times to somebody who is a computer scientist and be like, yo, I need this so I can do this, right? If you do that to somebody who is traditionally in HR, it's not going to work out for you, right? Because you have to be able to, and not necessarily HR, I just kind of typecasted HR, hypocrisy. But you really should make the effort to figure out the people around you, to figure out how to talk to them a little bit more. Maybe it takes a little bit more than, hey, can you do this for me? Maybe it's a little bit more like you're writing an email and you have to say, hi, how are you? The weather's doing great outside. By the way, whenever you get the chance, could you possibly find it in the time to do blank? And if you're nice to people and happier with people and people like you, I guarantee you, as somebody that has a tough personality to work with, it's much easier to find your way around in the workforce. So I would recommend keeping those things in mind. Does anybody have any questions so far? Feel free to speak up or ask me like obscure questions. I love obscure questions. Cool. So tools in the workspace, UCO and most universities do a phenomenal job at computer theory. That's a key word, right? Theory at UCO is wonderful, right? Because theory is mostly mathematical. It stays around. Computer theory does not magically change unless somebody invents a quantum computer, right? So it's something that's taught very well at most universities. Tools, on the other hand, are hard to teach. It's not that universities don't teach them well. This may be a little bit misleading. It's that they change so fast, right? So if you've gone to school here at UCO, you've probably been taught something like Ant and Ivy, right? You've probably been taught the PSQL stuff that you have to do in the databases. You've probably been taught Subversion. But whenever you get out into the workforce, and if you don't know what those tools are, don't worry about them, you'll learn about them, right? But whenever you get out into the workforce, you're going to need to know more updated tools. You've probably, if you're an open source developer right now, you've probably more likely heard Git, or you've heard Maven, or you've heard Gradle if you're a mobile developer, right? The point here is don't rely on your teaching in university necessarily to be familiar with the tools, because the stuff at university is there to make your habits good, right? It's there to make your habits good, to help you with your critical thinking, to know a little bit about the theory. But there is no way that a university can teach every single tool out there, because they're just getting pumped out so fast, right? Brings me to my next thought here, which is if you're not already, diving into this kind of thing on your own, you might have a little bit of a hard time in the workforce, right? Because the thing about computer science is no matter what part of the scale you're on, whether you're software engineering or computer science or computer engineering, whatever you are, it's a relatively new field, right? Almost requires you to be a scientist at your core, not just at your day job, right? If you have a problem, a lot of times in the workforce, it's going to be a little bit annoying if you have to ask the person next to you every 5 seconds. It means go discover it on your own. We have Google. Google's brilliant. They didn't have that 20 years ago. So. If I was watching this slideshow and I wasn't me up here, I would totally scoff at this and make fun of the guy. Because this is so real, all right? The millennial mindset. I'm a millennial, all right? If you meet the standard, like you show up to work on time, right? You dress professionally, you say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am. You have a resume, that looks pretty professional. You're going to be ahead of the curve. And you scoff at it now, or at least I scoffed at it now because I think I know everything. But whenever you get out into the workforce, you realize how many people don't take that extra step, right? Going from 0% to 90% is so easy to do. What really makes you a good computer scientist, especially in the workforce, is making that extra 10%, right? It's a short distance, but it's really what sets you out. So you can get most of the way there by trying to meet the standard. Does anybody have any questions about that? Any scoffs? Does anybody want to scoff? All right. So things that you should expect from others. You hear this a lot in the art industry, where artists and, in STEM, it's really easy to be like, oh, they're artists, but we are STEM majors. We're supposed to be getting a lot of money, right? It's really, really easy for you as an individual to not be, how do I put it, to think less of yourself because you don't think you know as much, right? So there's different kinds of developers that you'll find in the workforce. This is important for later on in life if you are doing taxes and stuff. Well, I've always wanted to learn about taxes. Not really, right? Most people, a lot of people, employees, right, they get benefits. Or you're a contractor. You don't get benefits. You have to pay your own taxes, right? I don't want to get too far down into it, but it's important to know if you're going to go out into the workforce, being a freelancer, being an intern, whatever that is, right? There is a difference, and you should think of yourself a little bit differently depending on which role you take, right? So does everybody pretty much know employee versus contractor? Like if you're an employee, you are of that company. If you're a contractor, you're working for the company, but not necessarily. If you're a freelancer, you don't work for anybody, you just kind of do a project one-on-one, right? No matter what it is, you've got to be paid, right? This is a hard lesson that I learned, right? It once was the theory that you could be an intern that was not paid, right? In a economy where that worked. We have to make sure that we have roofs over our heads, right? So don't let somebody take advantage of you. If you're working in academia and your research, where you're doing an internship for UCO to do that credit, that's different, right? But if you're going out on your own and you're like, I'm gonna go take an internship so that maybe I'll get a job in the future, don't do it. Because there are plenty of entry-level jobs that you can get as soon as you graduate. If you're graduating this semester, you can do it as soon as you graduate, right? There's something in Oklahoma City called Greater Grads Intern OKC. If you don't write anything else down today and you're looking into the immediate future, take a look at that, because the minimum you will make if you get a Greater Grads job is $12 an hour. That may not seem a lot if you are already in the workforce, right? But if you are just starting out and you're trying to get something on the resume, $12 an hour to $15 an hour in Oklahoma City specifically, it's probably going to be the average, right? So what they do, the Greater City Chamber of Commerce of Oklahoma City, they say, let's get all these companies together, give them incentives to hire people full time. And this isn't the internship where you're going to go and buy somebody coffee, right? You're not going to go down and give your boss coffee because that's all you do. Whenever I talk about Sonic, most of my other jobs have been like full-time jobs, but Sonic was my full-time internship, right? I was developing reporting tools and, doing data analysis and stuff like that. So this is an extremely high-end, or this is an extremely good opportunity if you plan to stay in Oklahoma City, or if you don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. So keep that in mind. But no matter what happens, make sure you have a contract in place, right? Even if you do like freelance or something like that, make sure that it's not a gentleman's contract. Don't do a word of mouth. Yeah, man, I'll pay you. Once you get that product to me, it's not going to work. You're not going to get paid. Make sure it happens. It's not a fun conversation to happen. It's easy to get taken advantage of, right? It's easy to get taken advantage of with people with ideas that don't want to do the work. So just keep that in mind, right? Ooh, hello. This is sort of what you should expect once you have finished an internship. If you decide to do an internship, what if you are in computer science, a broad range, and this is from salary.com, so trust it or don't trust it. Essentially what I went in there, as I said, in Oklahoma City, here's a job, give me the high end, give me the low end for somebody who's an entry level, somebody who's mid level, somebody who's high level. right? And maybe you guys are different than me, but whenever I got into the force, these numbers look really, really high to me, right? I expected to make much lower because I'm used to, hey, here's a $10 an hour job. That doesn't really add up to that much, right? But you can see, and I don't want to throw too many numbers at you because I would get bored in your position, but it ranges from $57,000 a year entry level to around $64,000 a year, right? That's enough, especially even if you're single, or especially if you're single, to do pretty well, right? In Oklahoma. I stress in Oklahoma because whenever you get to New York City or California or something like that, the living costs are much, much higher. But specifically in Oklahoma, the living costs are very, very low, right? And the tech industry in Oklahoma City is booming right now. So this is something to keep in mind. Does anybody have any questions whatsoever on this? I know I don't want to spit too many numbers at you guys. Numbers are boring. That's why I did computer science. So freelancing, a little bit more of it. Just don't get taken advantage of, right? How many people in here have heard of a startup company or asked to join a startup company from an UCO? Not a whole lot of people. Some people.
From the UCO?
From a UCO student or outside of a UCO student, somebody was like, hey, I have a startup, come help me out. Somebody said, hey man, I am doing a startup if you're interested. Somebody didn't call the startup, they just said, hey, I'm forming this company. Yeah, a couple people. So be careful if you do this, right? Because as a software engineer, right, sometimes if it was hard to find work or I was doing school at the same time, this is kind of the route I wanted to go. But make sure, like I said, that you get compensated. Make sure that you either are you own the organization, or you're being paid a lot up front, you're being paid royalties, or you're on a paid contract, right? Don't get screwed over. I say that a lot. I'll stop saying that soon. But it's a thing, right? Just make sure. And just be mindful of taxes and stuff. Because these are real things that will happen whenever you get into the workforce, right? Nobody holds your hand, right? If you've seen this in Dr. Fu's class, right? This is how the customer explained it, how the project leader understood it, all the way to what the customer actually needed, right? How many people have studied Agile yet? A little bit? All right, you guys remember product backlogs, stuff like that? You're like, I hated that stuff. You're gonna love it, believe me. So
Back, fix it. Go for it.
well, if you want to go with the IBM, they bless their hearts style. Here's a book. Do it. I forget the backlog, right? So sometimes your customer doesn't know what they want. This doesn't matter if you're a freelancer. I know it says freelancer. It doesn't matter if you're a freelancer, you're working as an employee, right? Or you're working as a contractor. Sometimes your supervisor doesn't actually know what they want. They don't know as much as you do, right? If you're getting hired as a developer, but your boss is maybe a business analyst, who knows more about the business, but less about specifically what you do, they may not know what they want, right? Consider a menu. And I might screw us over a little bit, Rashid, but we'll see if I can get into this. Looks a lot like a backlog. This is a real event. Somebody asked me to design something. They're like, how much is it going to cost? I asked them, what do they want? I don't know. Well, I don't know how much it's going to cost, right? So I gave them a menu. I said, here's a bunch of stuff that could lead up to what you want, right? Pick the things you want. Leave out the things you don't want. So just a little sidebar there. Last thing is the unexpected, right? You would think that in computer science specifically, that like we'd have everything hashed out because we invented the stuff, right? No. First thing, all of your data is wrong. So the people who have worked in the force before are like, yeah, it is. So at UCO and every other college, Collegiate Institute of Higher Education, they pretty much give you good data. It's easier to teach. You know what to look for. This is cool. That's not what you're going to get. Here's an example. Data sets, they're caused by real world events. Imagine that, right? If you've ever worked in robotics, because I know the robotics club has done pretty well. You know that if you're driving, you have to compensate for your friction, your angular velocity. You got to compensate for all the real world stuff that you didn't calculate on a piece of paper. It is the same in real life, right? I had a store when I was working at Sonic. And Sonic, I mention it a lot because that's where I learned a lot of the stuff, right? I did a lot of things after that, but Sonic is really where I learned the big stuff. There was a store in Florida that had a $500 discrepancy every single day for burritos. Why burritos? What? Why? We dug through all of the spreadsheets. Our team came together. We were trying to figure it out. We had no idea what was going on. And I was like, wait, pulled up Google Maps, looked up every institution around that store, found a school, called the school. School bought 500 burritos every day for lunch at that Sonic store. Real data causes bad data. That's something you're going to run into a lot, right? And you're going to see it and you're going to be like, that's why. And maybe it's an off by one or rounding error or something, and you'll be able to fix it. Maybe it's just something you're going to have to deal with, right? But it kind of makes the job more fun, right? If you're a scientist, you kind of want to learn things. Oh, people influence data. Very, very few people know what they're doing. All right. Most people in the field are learning just as much as you guys are. Whenever I went to the field, I found that I knew people, I knew things that others didn't, right? I'd be an intern somewhere and somebody would say, hey, what about this? What are your thoughts? I'm like, I'm just a small person here. Why are you talking to me? Why are you asking me? I don't know anything, but everybody's learning, right? The stuff you learn here, the stuff you learn in the ACM, in the computer science club, and the stuff you learn on your own is, you're really, really close if you're not there already, right? Because everybody else in the field is learning. Because this field is so new, right? We can't ask the founders of biology what they thought about biology because they're not here anymore, right? We can't ask the founders of physics about physics because they're not here anymore. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. Yeah, I don't think he's retired yet. He works at CERN. Ken Thompson invented Unix and is still inventing Go, right? The language. Linus Torvalds, you guys know, like the Linux kernel, right? These people are still alive. They may not have invented things all the way back to Ada Lovelace, but they're still around. They're still figuring things out. There's still things that these guys don't know. Because we may have made up computer science, but we did not invent mathematics, right? So you guys may go into the field and you're going to think, I don't know anything. And guess what? Nobody does either. So that's the most important thing that I learned going into the field there. A couple final thoughts. Build that resume, but don't rely on it, right? That resume is great to get your foot in the door, but you're going to have to back it up. So make sure you figure like you know your stuff. And I'm not saying that you got to be the best of your stuff. I'm saying be honest and network. Networking is super, super important. You'd be surprised how a single conversation, you take your business card out, you trade it with somebody, you get their business card back, you write their locate, like where you met them on the back of the business card. You call them up later, they will remember you. That can start a relationship, that can start a business, kick off your career. Make a new friend. I don't know. There's a cringe, right? If you guys don't know where to network, because I guarantee you, most people in the computer science department hate the social aspect of stuff, or they hate it outside of the computer science group, right? I know I did, /did. Two places you can go is you can either go to, there's other places, right? Just the things that came to mind at 3 o'clock in the morning when I was writing this thing was you can either go to Techlahoma, right? A bunch of, it's essentially a Confederate group of small user groups, right? You're like, I'm really interested in Python, Rashid. And you really want to learn about Python, right? You can go to a user group that is specifically Python, right? You really want to learn more about Rust, Java, something like that, Techlahoma. If you want to learn more about the general knowledge of computing, right? More about a knowledge base, we're building a professional ACM chapter, you can reach out to me. If you don't want to go and physically talk to somebody, contribute to Floss, right? Free, liber, open source software, open source things. Most of the things you use, I'm not going to say most, but a lot of the things you use are open source, you know? And it's a huge contributor to the resume, right? You're like, hey, I helped build Chrome, Google Chrome. Somebody's going to look at your resume and be like, yo, that guy. You know, open source project with Chromium, right? You can look at Apache software. Those are normally like older pieces of software that some people call it the graveyard, but I like it. It's got some really battle tested software in it. The open source initiative, make sure to ask questions because everyone else is. If you're not asking questions, you know, that's what computer science is. You're asking questions. So that's all I've got, but I hope that it was helpful to you guys. Now, it wasn't really a dive in depth of security or anything, but I asked, what did you guys want to hear? And they said, how much money am I making? What should I know? So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Any questions? Okay, cool stuff.
Thank you, Caleb. Good job, man.
Thank you.
I worked for like 2 hours.